from Columbia in high definition. This is WIS News 10 Awareness.
Good morning and thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. Well, Air Force One flew into Columbia Metropolitan Airport last Friday just before noon. President Barack Obama was back in the Palmetto State after more than 7 years, his first time since becoming president.
It's been a while since I was in South Carolina. In fact, it's been too long. It has. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I love you, and I've been loving you. It's just I had a lot of stuff to do since I last saw you.
Well, President Obama came to Columbia to speak at Benedict College, the private HBCU in the heart of downtown. He touched on several topics through audience questions, including climate change, Ferguson, student loans, and gun control. But his main message, hard work and giving back.
My first and general point is do not get cynical about what's possible. You know, the second thing is you got to work really hard. And there's no free lunch. And you can't make excuses. In particular, when I'm talking to young African-American men, you know, sometimes I think the sense is cards are stacked against us and discrimination's still out there. And so it's easy sometimes just to kind of pull back and say, well, you know, this is just too hard. And you know, this is part of why it's so important for us to remember Selma tomorrow. It's not as hard as it was 50 years ago. It's not as hard as it was when Jim Clyburn was coming up, and he's now one of the most powerful men in the country, growing up right here in South Carolina. So there are no excuses not to put in the effort. There are no excuses not to hit the books. If you want a good education in this country, you can get a good education, even if you are in a bad school. And I'll be honest with you, we got to do some work to make schools more equal. Right here in South Carolina, there's still schools that were built back in the 1800s that haven't been repaired, and don't have decent restrooms, and don't have proper books. And So we've still got to fight to make sure that every child, not just some, have equal opportunity. That's a worthy fight. But you can still learn even in that school. Even in the most rundown school, if you're putting the effort, you can get a good education. So you can't make excuses. Even as you advocate for justice, you got to make sure that you're also taking advantage of the opportunities that you currently have. But that brings me to one last piece of advice for young people, and that is think about more than just yourself. Think about how you can have an impact beyond yourself. The people who I know who are really happy and successful as they get older, it's because they have an impact on something other than just their own situation. They're not just thinking about how do I get mine, they're thinking about how does everybody get their fair share. And when they do that, that gives meaning to your life, that gives purpose to your life, that gives you influence and a sense of purpose. And you got to have a sense of purpose beyond just the almighty dollar. I mean, we live in a free market society, and one of the things that sets America apart is business and entrepreneurship and hustle. And you know, some folks are out there just they're trying to make a new product or create a new service, and the profit motive is strong, and that's good, that's important. But if that's all you're thinking about, and you're not thinking about how you can also have an impact through your church, or if you're not thinking about how you can treat your employees right when you do get a business, if you're not thinking, once you do make it, what am I giving back to make sure that I'm giving a helping hand to the folks coming up behind me? If you're not thinking that way, you won't be able to get through the tough times. What gets you through tough times is that sense of purpose. And that purpose cannot just be about yourself, it's got to be about something larger.
Well, the reaction to the president was generally the same that day. Students, lawmakers, and leaders alike say they left energized.
What he said here truly is the truth about us having to step up to fill the shoes with everybody here. We got to play our role, right? The president, he cannot do it all. We have to take the responsibility to give back to the community as well.
What the president said about what we need to do for our young people is something that we at the Urban League been doing every day. You got to provide opportunities for our young people. You got to provide a structured environment. You got to connect them with work. I mean, work is transformative. So many of our young people now do not know what work is. Work is not an option. In many communities, work has disappeared. So young people grow up and they don't see work as an option, as a pathway for opportunities. And we got to catch them very early on. These are our future. We must work with our young people. And I'm telling you, the president gave us a really boost. He energized all of us. I'm telling you, we're just committed to do more for our young people.
Still to come on Awareness, one of the reasons for the president's visit:
to spotlight Columbia and to show the country and show the world that we're serious about this issue.
How Columbia is working to keep youth engaged and encouraged to reach their potential with My Brother's Keeper. Welcome back to Awareness. Last February, President Obama announced the My Brother's Keeper initiative. He talked about it during the town hall at Benedict. Its mission is to equip young men and boys of color with skills to succeed and to find their purpose.
I first met Christian about a year ago. I visited the Hyde Park Academy in Chicago, which is only about a mile from my house. And Christian was part of this program called Becoming a Man. And it helps young men who show a lot of potential but may have gotten in some trouble to stay on the right path. They get help with schoolwork, but they also learn life skills, and it works.
When he came into our BAM circle, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Most people do not get to meet him, or if they do, it's just a handshake. He sat down with us and shared his story. And to my surprise, he was just like me, growing up without a father, and sometimes not too concerned with school.
I could see myself in these young men. And the only difference is that I grew up in an environment that was a little bit more forgiving. I told these young men my story then, and I repeat it now because I firmly believe that every child deserves the same chances that I had. And that's why we're here today. I'm going to pen this presidential memorandum to determine what we can do right now to improve the odds for boys and young men of color. And we're committed to building on what works. And we call it My Brother's Keeper.
President Obama decided to get the private sector, the public sector, these foundations, all these great individuals, entrepreneurs, get them all involved to make sure that we can have these young men go on and be successful in life. And this one here is really key for America, not just the black and brown community, but for America. It will improve America.
It's important to have resources and programs like this because it will help younger kids to motivate them. Like if they're failing grades, just to keep trying and just pursue your dreams and never give up.
The community is not always that bad. It's bad because people get shot and killed. And that's all that you hear about it, but you really don't hear about YG or BAM because this is low cap. You know, it's not publicized like, oh, it's a big thing. But now what Barack Obama is doing with My Brother's Initiative is blowing that up. Say it is some good coming out of the south side of Chicago.
My Brother's Keeper is getting off the ground in Columbia. I spoke with Tommy Preston, an attorney at Nexsen Pruet, who is one of the leaders of this initiative here in South Carolina. Certainly a nationwide issue, therefore a nationwide initiative. So what is Columbia's role in this?
So very exciting for us. The city of Columbia, under Mayor Benjamin's leadership, was the third city in the nation to sign up as a partner for My Brother's Keeper. So what that means is that we have taken it upon ourselves as a city to say that we're going to make this a priority, that we're going to create groups and opportunities for us to dive into some of these issues, that we're going to work to create specific programs to support young men of color. So this is a priority for us as a city.
So what has Columbia done in the last year?
So over the last year, we've been spending much of our time building coalitions of folks, looking to see what things are being done here in Columbia currently, but also putting a plan together for what we need to do long term. There are a number of groups here in Columbia, whether it's nonprofit groups, faith-based community, business communities, et cetera, who are working really hard to address issues for this population. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to see what folks were doing and then try to find a way that we could collaborate efforts and really do some great things to help these kids.
So did you and others here in Columbia reach out and have the president come specifically for this, or how did his whole visit come to be?
So I think there have been a number of people in Columbia, particularly the mayor, and through my involvement with My Brother's Keeper, that's been staying in close communication with the White House on what we're doing here in Columbia. I think because of Benedict's reputation of educating young men of color in Columbia, in South Carolina was one of the reasons they selected the institution. Certainly Congressman Clyburn was a part of helping make that decision as well. But Benedict College, as well as Allen Universities and other HBCUs in South Carolina, have been key players working with us to make sure that this initiative is a success in our city.
Well, I was going to ask specifically about the HBCUs. What role are they playing in helping you to develop some of these programs?
They're key partners. All of the HBCUs, not only in Columbia, but across the state, and other institutions. The University of South Carolina is a major partner in this initiative as well. So we're really excited to see higher education institutions come together in a way that I haven't seen before in our community to focus on some of the issues that we see exist out there.
What is the action plan moving forward? What can we expect to see in Columbia and statewide in the next several months to the next year?
Absolutely. So, so Mayor Benjamin will be announcing the formation of an advisory board soon that will consist of business, community, and political leaders in Columbia. And our role will be to work with groups around the city to not only develop new programming, but to promote and expand existing programs that currently are taking place here in Columbia. I think you're going to see increased collaboration. I think you're going to see more programming to bring folks together to talk about these issues. And because of the generosity of a number of different partners, the mayor announced recently $500,000 to help with this initiative. We're going to be making sure that that money is used very wisely and that we're using those resources to really help programming that long-term will help young men of color from birth to college. So I think we're very serious about that, and we'll be very deliberate in how we use those resources and how we partner with groups around the community.
And why should our viewers really care about this initiative? Because some might look at it and say, well, hey, you're just targeting a very specific population. So why should everyone else care?
Well, I consistently tell people that this is not a black issue and it's not a male issue, it's a community issue. And we have systemically seen that there are problems with young men of color. You look at graduation rates. Young men of color are traditionally on the wrong end of that issue. Look at incarceration rates, look at unemployment rates. So you look at these negative issues that are taking place in the communities, and we see that there's a demographic in our community and across the country that are affected most. So we believe that if we do a better job on the front end of helping these young men see that they have potential, see that there are people that care about them, that we will essentially break the cycle and create a new environment for not only those individual lives, but their families and our communities as well.
Well, because what affects one affects all.
Absolutely. One thing that people have been asking me, why do I personally care about this? And what I have been saying is, you know, I came from a single family home. My mom worked really hard to make sure that my brother and I had an opportunity to be successful. I had the opportunity to come to the University of South Carolina and get a great education and stay here in Columbia and go to law school and practice law at Nexsen Pruet here in Columbia. And I see myself in the faces of the young men that we're interacting with now. And I believe personally that the work that we are doing now and the work that we will continue to do with My Brother's Keeper is helping to change lives and give these guys an opportunity. And I could have been one of those same guys if I didn't have family and community lifting me up. So this is an opportunity for the city of Columbia to lift up these young men, and I'm really committed to it, and I hope that our entire community will as well.
When awareness returns.
Selma's not in the past, Selma's now for everybody here. And everybody's got their own personal Selma, their own bridge to cross.
Reflecting on the impact of Selma 50 years later. Welcome back to Awareness. What happened in Selma, Alabama 50 years ago is seared into the history of this country's struggle for civil rights. It came to be known as Bloody Sunday, the day when state troopers violently attacked protesters who were marching peacefully for the right to vote. 1 week ago, the nation's first African-American president retraced those steps alongside dozens of others, including former President George W. Bush. President Obama took a moment to look back and forward, enlisting a new generation into the fight.
50 years ago, he would have been met with troopers, tear gas, and taunts. Today, the first African-American president clutched the hand of one of the men who made it possible for him to be here as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a symbol of how far America has come.
If someone had told me when we were crossing this bridge that one day I will be back here introducing the first African-American president, I would have said, you're crazy.
Introduced by Congressman John Lewis, the only surviving leader of the Selma March, President Obama paid homage to all those who paved the way for him.
They held no elected office, but they led a nation.
For everyone in the crowd, this day is personal.
I've always been taught that you don't know where you're going unless you know where you come from. I'm here for my parents, my grandmother. She probably couldn't even imagine standing here in this place.
It's also a reminder of how painful it was to get here. It was March 7th, 1965, when a group of activists set out on this bridge to demand voting rights and were met by an unimaginable brutality by those who were supposed to protect them.
What did they do?
They started wading into us after just a short period of time. Beating and riding horses and with the tear gas. It was horrible, and it was something that I don't ever want to relive.
I was injured in that, along with quite a few others.
Mary Liuzzo was a child when her mother Viola volunteered to drive marchers home after a subsequent trek from Selma to Montgomery. A lot of people said it wasn't Viola's battle to fight. After all, she was a white mother of 5.
For her children having a good life involved having a better world.
That courage cost Viola her life, killed at the hands of the KKK.
I am so proud to be her daughter.
The daughters and sons of Selma say the journey isn't over yet. With incidents like Ferguson and the Supreme Court's decision to reverse a key part of the Voting Rights Act. Today, President Obama had this message for 100 members of Congress who made the trip with him and those who didn't.
If we want to honor this day, let that 100 go back to Washington and gather 400 more and together pledge to make it their mission to restore that law this year. That's how we honor those on this bridge.
A renewed call to action to fulfill a vision from 50 years ago.
Selma's impact certainly extended far beyond Alabama. Now, civil rights activist and voter education advocate James Felder reflects on the meaning of Selma. Now, we heard Congressman John Lewis and even the president yesterday and today talk about Selma is today. There's still so much more work to be done. What does that mean to you and to the current generation, the youth of today?
The youth of today needs to go out and vote. We commemorate 50 years of Selma. Selma was the catalyst that really brought to us the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's what got me involved in voter registration some 50 years ago. The vote is our power. We don't use it. We don't exercise it enough.
Right.
After all of the persons you've seen in this movie Selma, the people who died and was blooded as John Lewis was, paid a dear price, and we don't take advantage of it.
Right, and former state rep, one of the first African Americans elected to the State House, and now you are the head of the South Carolina Voter Education Project. So voting is clearly an issue that is near and dear to your heart. What is the biggest message that you want people, not just the youth, to take away from Selma and the impact of Selma?
Don't let what happened in Selma 50 years ago fade away. Don't let that happen. We need to build on that. Just like in Ferguson, Missouri, if they had voted, we might not have had the problems we had in Ferguson. They did not exercise the vote. I want us to build on what has happened and keep doing it. In South Carolina, it's not what it like in 1965 when we only had 50,000 black registered voters. Today we almost have 1 million African American voters in South Carolina. But when you're only turning out 43%, that doesn't speak very well. And that's true in the white community as well as the black community. So we need to exercise that right, that given right in the Constitution that we fought so hard for, died for.
With you being so active, how do you feel now looking back 50 years later to see the progress we've made as a nation?
I am pleased with the progress. I never thought I'd be around to see a black president elected or Jim Clyburn serving in Congress. We didn't dream that years ago. We thought it might happen. We didn't dream it would happen during our lifetime. So I have 2 grandsons, Sean and Lance, and I hope that they will take from this. Right now they're watching the movie Selma as we speak here. But I want them to learn of what happened in the past so they don't make mistakes that we have to retrogress to where we came from.
Because it needs to influence them to act today.
Exactly.
We'll be right back with a final thought. As a community, we need to constantly work to uplift our youth. We can do that by showing them endless possibilities and potential and give them the tools they need to achieve. By helping them, we help ourselves. We cannot afford to let them fail. We need to teach them the lessons of history and help them find their purpose to carry on. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.